Hello everyone, this is my presentation on Module 12 for the case study. Alrighty, so for this case study, the summary of the facts is that this is a small district outside of a bigger city called St. Regis. Within this district, there are roughly about 420 students that attend, and it is grades K through 8. Any students that are above that are going to actually be bused to the nearest high school, so which is probably going to be that bigger city about 25 miles away. Within the past 3 years, this district's PTA has saved a lot of money from their fundraisers that they do a couple times a year to buy computers and technology software for this district. They were able to make a computer lab with 20 computers for this for the K-8 students and able to purchase some software to go onto these computers. Miss Lynn is the library media specialist who is in charge of all of this and has started to come up with more items that can be purchased for the next few years and has created a very organized schedule of using the computer lab and what students come in, what classrooms come in at specific times, and for how long. After about 4 months of this, some of the teachers approached Miss Lynn and they're like, could you start making copies of said software? And so she did, and without realizing it, and is violating copyright laws. Software that is specifically downloaded to your computer is not supposed to be used or copied for multiple computers or multiple people. Along with this, Mrs. Evans, who is the PTA president, joins her one day in creating some of the copies. So one day, one of the teachers, Mrs. Brandon, who she's been teaching for a few years, but it has not been in this district. She was very uncomfortable with the idea of these copies being made, so she went to the principal, Mr. Sample, and discussed the fact that there are copyright issues happening in the school district. When Mr. Sample went and approached the subject with Mrs. Lynn, she was a little defensive about it, saying, we're saving the district a lot of money. Even the PTA president, Mrs. Evans, thinks this is a great idea. And he does ask her to find all the copies and destroy them. So within these, there's not really a lot of harm done physically. However, it is just the potential for any lawsuits or job loss, those kind of harms that could potentially happen if this is not fixed in a positive and ethical manner. Again, the laws, it's violating copyright laws because the materials that were bought, it's only a specific number of materials and you cannot make copies of those. So breach of contract is going to be that a lot of these software companies, again, you have the contracts with those companies for a certain amount and you're not allowed to make copies of the software or without express permission, and they were not given permission to do so. So Mr. Sample now needs to decide what needs to be done to correct the copyright issues and then consequences for Miss Lynn and then other participating teachers, and then as well as this, find a solution to be able to get more software for these classrooms. So just the people involved again, Mr. Sample is the principal, Mrs. Lynn is the library media specialist, Mrs. Brandon was the concerned teacher who brought this issue up. Mrs. Williams was one of the teachers mentioned, that is a veteran teacher that was going along with this, and then it did mention other teachers had come up to Mrs. Lynn to have her do this. And then PTA, they're the ones who again organize all the buying and funding for this. And again, it is a K-8 building. It is the St. Regis School District. Again, it's in a rural place because it is 25 miles from the nearest city. Library is where all of these copies are being made, and then some classrooms in the school, again, had copies, but not all of them. It didn't specifically mention how many classrooms or how many did not have these copies. Again, the programs was just a specific software program that was purchased for the computer lab, and it is being shared in that computer lab with between all of the K-8 teachers and their classrooms. And so again, that is multiple grade levels who are using this software. So after looking at all the information again, it's something, if this is not handled immediately, then there is going to be some very serious consequences to all the stakeholders. So the stakeholders are going to be your students, your teachers, the PTA, and especially the administration, because they're the ones who look at the contracts and are the ones who are taking care of said problems with that. So they're going to be the ones who really have a pretty big stake in the outcome. Again, and PTA, they're the ones that bought it. And so they're the ones that created that contract with the software companies. And so they're the ones that have to make sure that their teachers know the rules and regulations from that software company and are making sure that they're not using it for said unintended purposes, which it is. It seems that so far, without having a solution yet, that the main people have been consulted. So he approached Mrs. Lynn about it and confronted her with the information that was given to him. So moving forward, there needs to be communication with the teachers, possibly with other admin and school board about the copies of the software. And then again, something that I noticed was kind of big was that Mrs. Brandon was the only teacher who spoke up about this. Copyright violations are a fairly large violation depending on how many copies are made. The contract with the software companies, so the fact that not any other teachers intervened too is definitely slightly concerning. So either they haven't had training on this, or they just they didn't come forward with that information. So options for a possible solution. So option one is that he doesn't take any action. He tells her to do it. She ends up not doing anything. And the consequence for that is going to be that more people are going to find out about it, and they're going to have some very serious consequences from the software company and possibly administration and higher up. The most severe possible outcome would be going to the school board, presenting them with the information and copyrighted materials, with very strict and very harsh punishment. So Mrs. Lynn could potentially be fired from this, and then any other teachers involved could face very big penalties because of this. A slightly more middle of the road option, continue with the original action of asking Mrs. Lynn to collect and destroy all the copies. Your teachers are going to be upset over this, but they will come to understand that it is something that needs to be done. A little higher than the last one, destroying all the copies, and then having a staff meeting to discuss what happened, and then having a conversation about copyrights. So possible outcomes would be, teachers are going to gain a better understanding for copyright laws, and discuss why those actions were taken and why they were needed. And then the last option was kind of a combination between using the school board and then that last option, number 4, of informing the school board and superintendents of actions, but however in a less severe tone, where you are letting them know that the staff is going to be involved in this process of being addressed, having staff meetings and having trainings to go over all of this information. So the outcomes for this, just Mrs. Lynn, possible consequences could be she could feel threatened because you went to the school board. Staff could say that they didn't really get a choice in the matter. However, at the end of the day, everyone involved is going to, again, come to understand that the actions that were taken for all of this is the benefit for all stakeholders, so all the teachers, all the administration, everybody involved. So the pros and cons within these options. So option 1, the no action taken. Pro, you're going to keep your teachers happy and you're going to save money. However, again, you're going to have that huge violation of copyright laws, and you're going to have those huge consequences for not destroying those copies. Again, the going to the school board and having making it a very big deal. Pro is you cover all of your bases, make sure all the stakeholders are safe from those violations. However, you're going to have the con is you're going to have some pretty big staff pushback because of that. They will probably feel that it was taken really far and not handled in the best possible way. And then it could impact your relationships with them. So then option 3, you're going to continue with the original action and asking Mrs. Lynn to collect all those copies and destroy them. Again, this pro is you're making sure all those violations, the copyrighted materials, are gone and they're not going to be made again. Con, doesn't feel like this is enough that needs to be done. So again, your teachers are still going to be upset, but I think, whatever action you do take, they're going to be upset no matter what. It's just you're playing devil's advocate. Option 4, so destroying all the copies and then having that staff meeting. So again, you're getting rid of all the materials and then following up and having those conversations with your staff. The con on this, again, staff's going to be upset. And then it could be possibly that the ones who didn't take the copies kind of feel like they're being punished for no reason with having to be in that staff meeting and listen to everything. Then the last one was that combination between 2 and 4, again, informing the superintendent and school board, letting them know that you are going to address this with the entire staff. You're going to have trainings. You're going to make sure everybody understands why you took the actions that you did. So this one, the pros, definitely you were encompassing all of the pros from the previous suggestions. It covers all the way from your stakeholders, from admin down to your, down to your teachers. It allows for your communication and conversation between yourself and your staff members, and still getting all those copies destroyed. And then it gives you some training on copyright information, because that's not something that tends to be a huge deal that most people don't think about needs to be trained on. But in this situation, you need to have training for that. And then the con, again, is just that the staff is going to be upset. They feel like they were doing something good. But again, they still need to understand the consequences and the outcomes for this action. So for me, my biggest one out of here was definitely option 5. So taking all those necessary steps. So informing the school board and superintendent of actions, but letting them know that the staff involved has been addressed and that you will be conducting a staff meeting as well as training for all staff members and stakeholders to go over all the necessary information. So my reasoning for taking this option, again, it involves all of your stakeholders. You have your superintendent and your school board. You have the teachers and the PTA president that was involved, as well as all the teachers that made the copies, and then anybody else who may have heard about it but didn't say anything, again, with that options for training and then that staff meeting afterward as well. And then again, because you're having that staff meeting, you're taking it a step further and involving everyone, giving everyone a chance to discuss what happened from the best point of view and all the valid information that needed to be said. And then again, because you're having the staff meeting, possibly giving a voice to other options for software or other things you could be doing instead of making these copies. And then again, the training, I think, is the biggest thing with this, is because from this scenario, it did not seem like nobody here had any issues with it, when it really is a big issue to be making these copies and violating copyright laws. So for my steps in my action plan, first thing, definitely after you've had that first discussion with Mrs. Lynn, going to your school board and superintendent and talking about this continued action plan. So giving them all the information, addressing anything that might need to be addressed with the school board and superintendent, if they have any other clarifications that need to be made, any extra things that you could do with following this action plan. So then once you've gone to them, you would need to go directly back to that source, so Mrs. Lynn and Mrs. Evans, especially because she was there one day. So giving them both a firm discussion on that their actions were unacceptable, in discussing why, and discussing, the fact that they are going to get written warnings. They're not going to be fired over this. It is a mistake. Everyone does them, but it is a bigger mistake, and it needs to not happen again. And just make that very firm that this is something that will not be happening again. And have them understand that, yes, you completely understand that you were trying your best to save the school money and you were trying to find other solutions, but that this is not the correct solution for said things. Again, like I said, giving them the written warnings, and that, if it were to happen again, they could be terminated and probably would be terminated. But then also following up with, see what you could do for them in the future if, they come across something like this and they don't know what to do. If they don't think it's right, or that they don't think or if it could be the right answer, just ask and make sure that they're asking those questions from you and making sure that they are doing the right thing. So that after you have conferred with them, you then have your full staff meeting to discuss the actions with all of your staff members. So again, giving them the valid information, not any rumors or whisperings that have been heard, the actual facts of the actions that were taken. Again, clearing up any confusion with that if they heard anything, clearing up any confusion about copyright and violation laws, and then being able to communicate other options for the future. So ask your staff member, because they're the one that use the software, and we understand that PTA does do a lot of the fundraising, but teachers are the main source. They're the ones that work with the kids, so maybe they know some other things that you could try to do and work in for future options. And then that last piece, again, holding a training for all stakeholders involved. So clearly even the PTA president didn't even realize that she was violating copyright laws. So PTA, the teachers, even administration, this is something that would be a training for everybody, not just teachers and staff, but for every stakeholder involved in this process. So again, some of those backup questions, like what could happen? So the eventualities is, everyone is very content with this decision. It could be the best possible outcome. Everything could have been covered perfectly. And then on the flip side of that, the school board and the superintendent didn't like your plan, and it was the worst possible outcome. Everything went wrong. So it just depends, because every situation is going to be different. But again, I feel that if you take all those carefully planned out steps and you talk with very firm and coming from a place of understanding as well, you're going to have your staff members in a better place. Again, the biggest people that do need to know is going to be your school board and your superintendent. Mrs. Lynn and Mrs. Evans are the ones who were creating the copies, your staff and your teachers, and then the PTA, of course, as well, because their PTA president was involved in this as well. I do believe this is something that could be dealt within your own school district. I think it will really depend on like how many, because really didn't say how many copies were made. If it was an excessive amount, then yes, you would actually need to go to the software company and have the process with them and say, hey, this happened, we have taken care of it, but you need to know because of the amount of copies that were made. But again, I really do think it depends on your district and it depends on your stakeholders as well. But I think this is something that can be taken care of and consulted within your own school district. So what if the school district does decide to reject your plan? I think, again, because they're the main ones that deal with these kinds of things. So you want to ask them what they think is the best option. Hear all of their options that they have, hear all of their suggestions, and then come together as a group to decide what the best course of action is from all of the information they have given you. Still, again, making sure that all the stakeholders are involved. So them, the teachers, the administration, everyone who could be potentially at risk needs to be involved, and then coming up with that plan with them and then following said plan. Alrighty, thank you all so much for watching.